Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we'll be talking about the Nevada Club that was located in Reno, Nevada from the years of 1946 until 1998. It goes back to being one of the earlier casinos and clubs that was located in Reno and Nevada as a whole. At this time, Reno was bigger than Las Vegas, like I've stated in earlier videos, and that meant that more action was happening there. Originally, the Nevada Club was called Robbins Nevada Club when Harry and Ed Robbins owned it and opened it in 1941. In 1946, 4 more individuals would become partners with Harry and Ed, those being Lincoln Fitzgerald, Danny Sullivan, Mert Wertheimer, and Ruby Mathis. Shortly after opening, Mathis and Wertheimer would leave to go pursue operations at the Riverside in 1949, and then would eventually own it in 1955. Sullivan, Robbins, and Fitzgerald remained partners in the Nevada Club and would form an ownership corporation in 1952. In 1956, Danny Sullivan would pass away, and at that time Fitzgerald would buy Robbins out of the Nevada Club. From what I've gathered information about Lincoln Fitzgerald is that he was originally from Detroit, where he had 1 or 2 clubs, and one of them was the famous Chesterfield Club. I'm sure many people know those chips for being the plain mold chips that have the CC intertwined in the middle. This was in the 20s and 30s, but later on he would move to Reno to find new paths. He was also said to be affiliated with the Purple Gang that was around the Detroit area at that time too. In 1949, there was a news article that came out in Reno that said that Fitzgerald was shot outside of his house by a 12-gauge shotgun and would collapse to the floor. Paramedics came and rushed him to the hospital. Luckily, he survived and was able to continue what he was doing. What made the Nevada Club, in my eyes, a famous spot in Reno was that it probably had a very nice, small, at-home type of atmosphere, which many of these earlier clubs had in Reno and Vegas. This was when families still ran these places and before corporations would take over and make everything how they are today. The club had all types of games ranging from blackjack to craps and everything in between. The earliest chips featured aerodye and plain mold chips, then shortly after they got some TRKs into the building, which I believe is many people's favorite chips that came out of that place. Along with the chips being a major hit, they also had a very famous slot machines that featured the Nevada Bob character that they had on the front of their club. These machines originally being made by a company called Jennings. Jennings & Company were the leading manufacturer of slot machines and other coin-operated machines from 1906 to the 1980s. Many of these slot machines were made in the 1950s and apparently only lasted a few weeks in the casino, waiting for someone to hit a $5,000 jackpot, and then they were pulled out of the club. They were a $1 denomination, for-real machine that lit up and everything. Another thing that made the Nevada Club stand out from the rest was that Fitzgerald also opened up a club closer to Lake Tahoe called the Nevada Lodge. It was originally the Calneva Biltmore, but Fitzgerald bought the property and transformed it into the Nevada Lodge in 1958, meaning that he had 2 places to run with lots of action going on at both of them. A few of the chips used at the Nevada Club would also get used at the Nevada Lodge, where they had club and lodge on the inlay. Many of these being the TRK chips, and then a few select zigzag roulette chips from the earlier years. I was unable to find specific information about the Nevada Lodge, but I'd say imagine the Nevada Club that was located in downtown Reno, and just place that in Crystal Bay near Lake Tahoe, and that's what it was. Now, let's go back to the Nevada Club. There were these chips that were from there that don't have any denominations on them, and they just say Nevada Club Reno on them. There's 2 different versions, being one is a blue and orange one, and then the other one is a green and white. Those chips were specifically made for a man called Laverne Redfield. He was born in 1897 and grew up poor. When he was growing up, he saved his money, worked his way from the bottom to eventually become a store clerk, and then ended up marrying his dream lady. While in California, he walked by a brokerage office, and this was when there was a craze going on with the oil stock exchange. He went back the next day and bought some stock in the oil well syndicates. Making that move would turn him into a millionaire in his 30s. Redfield would move to Reno and walk a mile and a half to go visit the Nevada Club because he didn't want to waste money on gas. He loved roulette and would become great friends with Lincoln Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald allowed Redfield to bet higher limits and then would specifically have those chips made for him. That way, every time he came to the Nevada Club, he was playing with his chips, and he was basically allowed to bet how high he wanted to, as long as he let the dealers know what he was betting. Along with those chips, there are apparently a set of blue and orange chips that were made with numbers going up from 1 up to 99. Lincoln Fitzgerald would become a Nevada gaming pioneer and would pass away in 1981 at the age of 88. As for the later years of the Nevada Club and Lodge, I suspect that business was steady and great. Those are some of the most popular chips to come out of Reno, and to those that have sets of them. I'm lucky enough to currently have a few chips, but I definitely would want to have more in the future when the chances arise. The Nevada Lodge would close in 1986, and the Nevada Club would close in 1998 after being open for 42 years. That was the history of the Nevada Club that was located in downtown Reno and the Nevada Lodge Casino, both standout favorites from Reno and Lake Tahoe. I hope you enjoyed the video, and let me know which casinos you'd like to see in the future. If you have any more information about the Nevada Club or the Nevada Lodge, please put it down in the comments down below, and that way we could get some more information about these places. Being that they're so old, there probably isn't many or much information out there in books or on the internet for any of these clubs themselves. So to the links where I got the information, they'll be in the description as always. Thank you all again for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.